Yo, what up? How you guys doing out there today? This is your boy Rotobeast. I'm here with my boy Jeremy. We're here to present you our NBA morning shoot around for Wednesday, February 12th. If you're new to this channel, please make sure and click the subscribe button below. This way you can watch all of our NBA, NFL, and MLB videos. If you haven't come and checked out our website here at DFSCheatSheet.com, you're absolutely missing out. We have all the tools to help you compete with the pros day in and day out, including a complete optimizer, tons of content, daily FanDuel and DraftKings cash lineups. Hey, we're truly a one-stop shop for all your DFS needs. So make sure to come check out the site here at DFSCheatSheet.com. So what up, Jeremy? How you doing out there, bro?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, another day of NBA. Definitely think today's going to be a pretty good day. I honestly don't think we have to spend a crazy amount of time on this video today. Yes, there is 11 games, but we got Giannis out being out today, so it's going to really be just a Milwaukee Bucks stack, and then you kind of fit some other pieces around it. So I think it's going to be a pretty good video. We'll just kind of highlight some key guys that we think are in play from each game, and we'll just kind of move forward. But definitely think you go with the Milwaukee stack, and then you just kind of figure out the other players from there. You agree?
Look, anytime Giannis is out, we know what's going to happen. There's going to be some default chalk, and it's always going to be, is their price relevant or is their price now too expensive? So that,
For sure. Yeah, no, definitely. So let's jump into it. First game we're going to talk about, we got Detroit going into Orlando to face the Magic.
Yeah, I mean, look, Detroit is one of these teams that, what are they doing, right? I mean, Derrick Rose is going to come back to play. He's very fair price at 6,300. But with Reggie Jackson playing the way he's been playing at 5,400, does Derrick Rose take a hit? Does Reggie Jackson take a hit? Reggie Jackson coming off playing 32, 31, and 28 minutes in his last three games. And two of those he scored, in three of the last four games, he scored at least 25 points. So, he had a 45.5, a 34.1, a 36.9. So are they going to run Derrick Rose at the point guard and start him? Reggie Jackson point and Derrick Rose at the two. I kind of personally believe that Derrick Rose will play more of the two guard and Reggie Jackson will play more of the point guard. But from a production standpoint, how much do these guys cut into each other? They also look to have Milicic back. Bruce Brown's been in the rotation. Luke Kennard will remain out. And then you've got the power forward / center situation where you've got Duambier, Christian Wood, Thon Maker, and John Henson. So, to me, this is a little bit of a mess where there's not a clear-cut value play here. I think you could possibly look at Thon Maker for a value play. He's played at least 23 minutes in each of the last three games. His price tag is 4,700. He's had at least 30 fantasy points in two of those three outings. So I think you could look at Thon Maker. Reggie Jackson, if he's going to play those amount of minutes, and it's just a matter of we don't know, he's going to start, and we just don't know if he's going to start point guard, shooting guard. I think at 5,400, you could still play him. But that's really it, man. I mean, you just don't know with all these guys coming back, and now with Reggie Jackson playing this many minutes, you just don't know who's going to get how this is going to shake out. So it's more of a kind of a wait and see, my opinion.
Yeah, on the Orlando side of things, I mean, it's pretty easy. There's obvious you can play four of their five starters. You're looking at Markelle Fultz, he's a fair price. You can look at Fournier, he's a fair price. Aaron Gordon, 6,300, he's a fair price. You could even look at Vucevic. I think this is a really good spot for Vucevic with no Drummond in Detroit no more at 9,400. I definitely think that all four of those guys are in play. And then you can look at two guys off the bench, that are getting a consistent run. I think you can Michael Carter Williams. I mean, I think he's like a kind of a dark GPP play, but he's been getting some pretty good run. Also, you can look at Terrence Ross coming off the bench. He's been getting more run than Michael Carter Williams. I definitely would feel a lot more comfortable with Terrence Ross. I think he's a really good guy coming off the bench, playing around 30 minutes, so he's in play as well. So that's really where I'm at with Orlando. I think it's pretty easy that they got about 7 guys that they're really kind of just sticking with, and they're not really going too deeper. So I like those guys for sure. Moving on, next game we'll talk about, we got Atlanta going into Cleveland to face the Cavaliers.
I say this all the time when we have Cleveland at home on the slate, right? I really believe that this will be a competitive game. Vegas thinks so as well. Cleveland plays well at home. So if it's going to be that kind of a game, I think you have to look at Trae Young at 10-1. We talked about Bledsoe being a guy who's probably going to be default chalk as kind of a mid-tier play at point guard. I think you have to look at Trae Young at 10-1, a game that's got a 234 over-under and only a 2-point spread. Trae Young's definitely in play here. John Collins, not really interested in this play because I'm more interested to see how this shakes out with Kevin Love and Andre Drummond playing together. That's a really good front court, man. That's a really good front court.
Sure.
So Collins kind of not in the mix for me. Capella remains out. Dwayne Dedman, I don't know what's going on there. And this is another roster that, we got to kind of figure out when they're healthy, who's going to get the bulk of the minutes. And to me, the only guy you can depend on from the Atlanta side of things is Trae Young. And it's a very fair price tag at 10-1.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for Cleveland, I mean, you can look at Sexton. Sexton's having a really good year, 5,800. He's a very fair price tag. You can look at Drummond, obviously, at 10.2. I think that he's in a pretty good spot here. And then I just got to kind of wait and see what happens with Kevin Love. He's a game time decision listed as questionable. If he does play, I think he is in play at 7,000. And if he is out, I think you could look at Larry Nance at 4,500 as a pretty good value play on today's slate. But for me, I'm just going to really stick with those three guys. Well, I'm going to stick with, like I said, I'm going to stick with Sexton, Drummond, and then power forward. If Love plays, he's in. If Love is out, then you can look at Larry Nance. And, we'll move on. So we'll talk about Chalk City. Then we talked about it before we really got going. You got Milwaukee going into Indiana to face the Pacers.
Exactly, Chalk City. So you can look at all five of these starters, in my opinion. You can look at all five of them. You can also throw DiVincenzo in there at 4,200 at the shooting guard spot. Coming off a game where he played 25 minutes, 18.8 fantasy points. It's not, that's not value. We talk about value all the time. It's not a 6X figure, but he definitely has that upside, getting you as many as 27.4, 25.5. And then there's no Giannis here, so he does get a little bit of a bump. We know the Bucks are really high on DiVincenzo as well. So, this is simple. They're all in play, right? From Middleton, Bledsoe, Lopez, Ilyasova. I'll even throw Wesley Matthews in that mix as well at 3,600 on an 11-game slate. Wesley Matthews getting you 26 fantasy points today at 3,600 could be a slate breaker. And he plays 33 to 35 minutes a game as it is. A little extra usage to go around, obviously, without Giannis. So, I'll even throw him in the mix. I think that DiVincenzo. The most interesting play would be if Marvin Williams is going to see game action, and we're going to hear that. They said before the Sacramento game that he was cleared to make his debut with the Bucks. If we're going to hear that Marvin Williams is going to play today, like he's actually going to play. They said he was doubtful to play, but he could play in their last game, and he didn't play. But if they say today he's going to play today, he's 3,600. I think that would possibly eat into Ilyasova a little bit. And I think that he would be on an 11-game slate. Him and Wesley Matthews would be two good tournament dart plays.
For sure. On the Indiana side of things, I'm going to start with, I talked about Sabonis last game going against Brooklyn. I really liked him. And sure enough, man, the guy went out, had a triple-double, had a very, very good game. I'm going to go right back to Sabonis at 8,100. I think he's in a very good matchup, very fair price tag for what he's been doing. Miles Turner, 5,800 is definitely in play. TJ Warren at 5,400 is in play. My man Oladipo, 5,000. Yes, he hasn't had that crazy game, but man, the guy's minutes are trending up. Back-to-back games of at least 27 minutes. I think maybe he can get 29 minutes today, and he's going to have the monster breakout game. I'm not going to be the guy to miss that game. I'm going to continue to play him at this price tag. I think he is a GPP play right now, but I definitely think he is in play. And lastly, you got Malcolm Brogdon, 6,200. Very fair price tag. He had a rough night against the Nets. I understand. But overall, the guy's been playing very, very well on the season. I think that you can go right back to that well. Indiana's a team that I think they're going to be scary in the East. They definitely have some really good pieces. And I think today's game is going to be very competitive against Milwaukee, especially with no Antetokounmpo. I think this is a game that the Pacers possibly could steal. Moving on, next game we'll talk about, we got Washington going into New York to face the Knicks.
Washington on a back-to-back. I like this Washington team. I like this game a lot on this slate. We know Washington doesn't play a lot of defense. They get in track meets. They got in a track meet last night with the Bulls on the second half of a back-to-back. I expect them to get in a track meet again tonight. I'm not really keen on the price tag of Bradley Beal at 9.6 on this big slate. But if Ish Smith is going to start, I think at 4,900 you have to look at Ish Smith. He's been a solid play all year long with or without Bradley Beal in the lineup. We were playing Ish Smith back in the first 3 or 4 games of the season once we saw he was getting 20 minutes at a minimum value price tag. So I definitely think you can look at him. Hashimura is a guy who's playing extremely well. Yes, he missed some time, but you take a look last night, 39 fantasy points, Um, I like this Washington team. I like Mahamini at 3,900 as a value play at the center spot. The only guy I'm not going to recommend playing is Bonia because he just plays like 6, 7, 8, maybe 13 minutes, and then that's it. But it's Bertans, it's Mahamini, it's Ish Smith, it's Hashimura, it's Bradley Beal. All these guys are in consideration. And then the last guy I'll mention is Maurice Wagner. With Thomas Bryant out, Maurice Wagner is a guy I've recommended all year long. Maurice Wagner continues to get run. 21.6 fantasy points last night. Yes, it's not a 6X figure, but just 2 games ago against Memphis, he had 31.8. So we definitely know the upside is there with Wagner. I think you can take a look at all 6 of those guys on this slate. There's some really good value with the amount of minutes these guys are getting and the amount of points that Washington scores on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, on the New York side of things, we like targeting Washington. They're a team that doesn't play no defense, and New York doesn't play the best defense neither. I definitely think this game's going to be up and down, back and forth game, trying to outscore each other. There's 3 guys that really stick out to me for New York. Alfred Payton, he's playing very, very well. Alfred Payton gives us triple-double upside any night. The minutes are there. The production has been there. He's showing us some upside recently. I think that he's a guy you can look at in GPPs. Obviously, Julius Randle at 8,600. This is his type of game, coming off a monster game against Atlanta, which is, I will say it did go into overtime, so the numbers are a little bit inflated. I understand, but this is Julius Randle's type of game, up and down, track meet. Washington is a really similar team to Atlanta in their style of play, so I think Randle can have another really good game here. And last but not least, I like Mitchell Robinson going against Washington, who doesn't have, any really good centers. The guy played, 35 minutes last game. Even though it was overtime, the fact they still played him that many minutes shows that they're really getting more comfortable with him. And he produced, man, had a really good game, 46 fantasy points. So I think at 5,700, he's a guy that I think that we can look at as well. The only other guy I think that we could throw in GPPs. Possibly you could look at RJ Barrett. The minutes aren't there the way that they were earlier in the year, but I think he's a guy you could possibly look at a pretty cheap price tag. He has shown us some upside, this season that he does have. Again, like I said, really good matchup against Washington. But the main 3 guys are Payton, Randle, and I like Robinson. I think those are the guys you really look at for the New York side of things. Moving on, next game we talk about, we got Toronto going into Brooklyn to face the Nets.
Yeah, and to me, I think that Siakam's price tag is a little too expensive for this spot, but I do like Kyle Lowry at 7.3. I do like Van Vliet at 6.7, and I do like OG Anunoby at 4,800. Anunoby coming off a monster game. Granted, there was no Serge Ibaka. We'll have to wait and see if Ibaka is going to play today or not. Marc Gasol has already been ruled out. There is no Norman Powell, so there is a lot of value that you could also look at here on the Toronto side against this Brooklyn team. You could look at Terrence Davis. You could look at Rondae Hollis-Jefferson if Ibaka is going to be out. So there are some good plays here. And then one guy that I'll throw out there, I would roll in tournaments. If Ibaka is going to be out, I would definitely roll Chris Boucher back out again. He dudded in what seemed to be a pretty obvious spot where everybody forgot about Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. I think Boucher is a guy you could roll out again because of your recency bias. If Ibaka is out, everybody will load up Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. And, it's just one of those things that go ahead and load up Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, but make sure that if you're playing 150 lineups today, you do get some Boucher exposure as well. And whoever kind of has the better game gives you the better lineup. So both those guys to me would be in play again for different reasons. But I like Anunoby a lot here. I think it's kind of a mismatch for him at the small forward position. Joe Harris and Karis LeVert, you have to think that Taurean Prince is going to play against Pascal Siakam. And then, Van Vliet, to me, 6,700 is too cheap for the upside that he brings to the table on a day in and day out basis. He's not a cash game play unless Lowry's going to be out, which is not the case here. But on a day-to-day basis at 6,700, with his upside of 50 points, I think that he's always in play in any type of game that has a higher over-under.
Yeah, on the Brooklyn side of things, there's 3 guys I like personally. Dinwiddie, the price tag is really creeping up, but man, the guy's really, really been producing. He's been very consistent, giving us a pretty solid floor with Kyrie being out. So I definitely think that you could continue to look at him. Probably a little bit more of a GPP play. I'm a guy I really like. I like Karis LeVert a lot. The minutes are up right now. 3 of the past 4 games, he's got you at least 32 minutes. Kind of had an off night against Indiana, but the 2 other games Before that, the guy, 3 of the past 4 games, he scored at least 23 real life points. So the guy's starting to score the ball a little bit better. And then also, we talked about, Marcus Gasol being out for Toronto. They don't have a real big man. I think you can look at a guy like Jarrett Allen at 5,100, a very fair price tag. I think he's a guy you could possibly look at in GPPs to give you a little bit of upside against a undersized front court for Toronto. But I'm really going to stick with those 3 guys, where Karis LeVert probably being my favorite one. Moving on, next game we're going to talk about, we got Charlotte going into Minnesota to face the Timberwolves.
I mean, one quick thing. Kyrie Irving has missed 27 games this year, bro. 27 games.
Yep.
And he's not returning before the All-Star break. And then one other thing to point out, on FanDuel, Spencer Dinwiddie's been moved from shooting guard to now he's point guard eligible. So I think that maybe puts him a little bit out of things today with Bledsoe on the map.
Yeah, for sure. So next game we're going to talk about, we got Charlotte going into Minnesota to face the Timberwolves.
This will be a track meet also. I think this will be a track meet. I mean, I think that you have to look at Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier. We've talked about it all year. Point guards have had a lot of success this season against Minnesota. D'Angelo Russell stepping into their point guard role. Nobody's ever accused this guy of being an elite defender in the NBA. So, I'm going to look at those 2. Don't really have any interest in PJ Washington or the center position for that matter, because it's one of those things where you just don't know. If you want to get exposure in tournaments, their center position, fine, but it's not recommended. You don't know if Zeller's going to play, Hernan Gomez is going to play. You've got no idea if Biyombo is going to get run. You just don't know. So for me, 4,900 for a center that I don't know if he's going to play or not. No, thank you. PJ Washington, not really too interested in that play either. But I will look at Malik Monk. I will look at Miles Bridges. I will look at Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham in this contest tonight.
Yeah, for sure. On the Minnesota side of things, man, I mean, they traded out one of their best players. They got another pretty good player in return, and D'Angelo Russell. I mean, whenever you're talking about Minnesota, I think you got to start with Cat, man. I think Cat's a guy that we got to look at. I mean, the price tag at 10.3, he's going to give us a really solid floor. Charlotte doesn't have, a big man that I feel can really contest with Cat. I think that Cat's definitely in play. Outside of Cat, I mean, D'Angelo Russell at 7,600. The fact that he played 31 minutes in his first game with the Timberwolves, I think that, the guy, he had 22.5 assists, just didn't get no rebounds and a bunch of turnovers. But the turnovers come with the fact that he has to kind of get to know his new teammates. I think that, Cat, I think Russell, I think both those guys are definitely in play. I mean, the only other guy, I think you could look at McClellan as a GPP play. At 4,300, he's pretty cheap. But for me, it's really just D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Towns. And, we talked about, just really quick, going back to the Milwaukee game and that game being chalk. And you got guys like Ilyasova, Bledsoe, 6,700. They're fair price tags. Even Middleton's fair price tag at 7,200. So, I mean, we don't really have – there's some value there, is what I want to say. There's definitely some value. So we could pay up at some spots. And I like Cat. I definitely like Russell as well. Moving on, next game we'll talk about, we got Portland going into Memphis to face the Grizzlies.
Portland's on a back-to-back, and they kind of got smoked yesterday by our new default second favorite team in the league, huh? The Pelicans. So I like some of these plays here. I like Ariza a little bit. I like Carmelo Anthony just a little bit. I think 5,000 for Carmelo, who's a shooter, is a good price tag against a Grizzlies team that doesn't play defense and tends to get in shootouts, a lot like Washington. So I like Melo. I'm okay with Lillard as well at 9,600. I think that you look at, he had this run he went on where he was putting up 45 and 50 points like nothing and 70 fantasy points like nothing, and then he kind of went on a little bit of a break with 39 and 36, then came right back with 63 and 52. Then falls off last night where they got blown out. So, I look for Lillard to have a really good game and a bounce back in the second end of back-to-back. He only played 29 minutes last night. So, he's played as many as 43, 46 this year in overtime games. So, only playing 29 minutes last night. I think Lillard plays more minutes tonight. I think this is a more competitive game. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in John Morant with the hype going around this kid. So, I think there'll be some ownership on the Memphis side. I think people will look at Portland and kind of fade it because of Dame's price. But I definitely think Lillard's strongly in play here, as well as Carmelo Anthony. Just don't have any interest in, McCollum or Hassan Whiteside in this spot going against Valanciunas. But the other guy I'm going to continue to play, especially on bigger slates, is Gary Trent. I just think that this guy, he has 30-point upside. He's a three-point shooter. You look at, he plays between 27 and 33 minutes, and he's had at least 16 real points in three of the last 4 games, and he's got you at least 34 fantasy points in 2 of the last 3 games. So, Trent's a guy that I don't think anybody plays. When I've played him, he's like less than 2% owned in tournaments. He's a really good GPP play on this slate against a Memphis team where there's going to be a lot of scoring in this game.
Yeah, I mean, on the Memphis side of things, I mean, there's some guys that we can play. I just think that they're all more GPP plays just because they're young guys and there's a lot of inconsistency with their play. I'll start with John Morant, man. The guy showing us some upside, 6,700. He's a guy that if you're going to play anybody on Memphis and feel pretty comfortable with it, I think it's him. Outside of him, a guy that you've been liking this year, and he's kind of had a couple off games, so nobody's going to be on him. But the price tag is very fair. You can look at a guy like Dylan Brooks at 5,400. I think that he's firmly in play in GPPs. Outside of him, there's 2 guys I think you could look at, but like I said, GPPs, possibly Kyle Anderson at 4,700. Just the minutes are up and down. Some days he'll play 30, some days he'll only play 20. So that's the inconsistency I'm talking about. He's a guy that we could possibly look at. And then Jaren Jackson. Jaren Jackson has some upside. If he can stay on the floor, he always gets in foul trouble. He's a guy that definitely, can have some upside in this matchup against Portland. Valanciunas, I'm not too interested in. It's a kind of a tough matchup going against Whiteside. So for me, the main guys are Morant and Dylan Brooks are the guys that really stand out. Throw in Jaren Jackson, and the other guys are just kind of like secondary, maybe try to get them low owned. Moving on, next game we'll talk about, we got Sacramento going into Dallas to face the Mavericks.
Doncic is supposed to play today, so that kind of changes a little bit for me. But I think you can definitely look at Bjelica at 6,000. I don't like the matchup per se going against Porzingis, but I think you could definitely look at him. Outside of that, I got to be honest with you. I don't have a ton of interest in the Sacramento Kings today. I just think they're all tournament plays. I don't like the price tag on really anybody outside of possibly Buddy Hield. That's really it, man. I look at Buddy Hield. I just think there's better value. There's better plays tonight than the Sacramento Kings. I want to get that much exposure to him. You could possibly look at De'Aaron Fox, but I don't like the price tag at 8,200. There's guys that I think are in better spots. I will note that just a couple of weeks ago, De'Aaron Fox had 53.4 fantasy points and 37 minutes against Dallas. So he's played well against Dallas this season. 8,200. He's nothing more than a tournament play. And the only other guy that I think you consider on the slate is Buddy Hield.
For sure. On the Dallas side of things, you talked about Doncic coming back. But before we get to that, Porzingis and Tim Hardaway have been the guys that have been really playing well, have really been stepping it up with Doncic being out. I think both of those guys, their minutes are still fairly safe. They're both going to still get their regular run, even with Doncic coming back. So I think that you could look at them. One thing I will say is they may take a little bit of bump in usage, which, a little bit of a decrease in usage kind of means probably a couple less fantasy points. But especially Tim Hardaway at 5,100, he's a fair price tag. Porzingis, the second best player, he's still going to get his shots up. And then you got Doncic because he's been hurt. His price tag has came down a little bit to 9,700. If he does play tonight, man, I definitely think that he is in play. I like him in this spot. We got to wait and see if we hear about a minutes limit or something like that on him. And if he does end up getting ruled out, later in the day, they just say he's not ready to come back yet. I think you can look at Jalen Brunson once again at 4,200. He's been the one kind of getting that extended run with Doncic being out. But that's really where I'm at. It's really just, Doncic if he plays, Hardaway, Porzingis, and then Brunson if Doncic does end up getting ruled out. Moving on, next game we're talking about, we got Golden State going into Phoenix to face the Suns.
Let me ask you a quick question. Do you like Doncic if they say he's going to play 27 minutes today at that price tag?
Nah, not at 9,700. No, I don't. But, hey, you could throw him in tournaments. He can have big games. But I would definitely wouldn't consider him for cash games, no. But if they tell me – if they say he's going to play,
right, where he had 28 minutes and 60-something fantasy points, 27 minutes and 57 fantasy points. I'm just curious if you think because I think they play this game, and then this is the last game before the All-Star break for them, and then do they play him big minutes if he comes back? He said yesterday he's playing today, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, even if they just said they're going to cap him at 30, I'll pay the price tag at 30. I definitely will pay the price tag at 30. Next game, we got the Warriors going into Phoenix to face the Suns.
And I think that the biggest beneficiary here of moving D'Angelo Russell is Draymond Green. He didn't fill up the stat sheet from a scoring perspective against Miami. He only had 5 points, but this is the type of Draymond that we're used to seeing, right? 9 rebounds, 9 assists, a block shot, a steal, and he scored 5 points in 31 minutes. His minutes are coming back. You take a look at the last 7 games. He's played 33, 33, 31. Had one game against Brooklyn where he only played 20 minutes, but then he played 25 and 27 against Cleveland and Boston. And in the Cleveland game in 25 minutes, he had 50.4 fantasy points. He's gotten you at least 30 fantasy points in 4 of the last 6 games. I think Draymond, at 6,000 on this type of slate against Phoenix, this is the type of game where Draymond gets lost and could possibly have you one of these 40 to 50 fantasy point nights. So I do like him. Andrew Wiggins at 7-2. I'm never a fan of Andrew Wiggins as far as fantasy goes. I think he's a really good basketball player. I'm not a fan of Wiggins. I get the play. It's only 7,200. He's the guy right now, with Draymond. He's their only real scorer. But to me, I want to look at Damian Lee. He continues to play extremely well this season. That's kind of where I'm at. Damian Lee, Draymond Green. If Ayton is out, which he's listed as doubtful right now, you could possibly look at Marquise Chris in a bit of a narrative situation going back against his former team here in the Phoenix Suns. But 5,800 for a guy at the center spot tonight, I just don't know, man. I mean, I've said it the last few games when Ayton's been out, they have no Kaminsky, they have no Saric, and then you have Ayton out. That it's a good spot for a center. I'm just not sold on Marquise Chris here at this spot. I just don't look at him as a true center. So in tournaments, fine. But to me, I think Draymond is a guy you can give real consideration to in all formats today because he seems to be the guy that's benefited the most from D'Angelo Russell leaving.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be honest with you. I do like Andrew Wiggins in this spot. He maybe is a little bit more of a GPP play, but the Suns, there's going to be an up and down type game. And I definitely think this game kind of suits Andrew Wiggins. On the Suns side of things, Ricky Rubio, his minutes have been up and down, man. But the price tag, 5,900, he definitely gives us some upside, especially against a young Golden State team. I think this is a spot you can look at Ricky Rubio. 8,100 for Booker in this matchup. I think he's a guy that's in play. Kelly Oubre is a guy that 6,900 that he's been playing pretty well, man. The thing I like about Oubre is he plays a ton of minutes. Before last game against the Lakers, where he got in foul trouble, he has 7 straight games of at least playing 35 minutes. So he's a guy that gets in there, just like we talked about, guys that are score dependent and guys that are actually get in there, play defense, and get rebounds. Oubre is one of those guys that'll get in there, get rebounds, get a couple assists, get a couple steals or blocks. I think he's a guy that you can look at. And then you missed it. Ayton, it's looking like he's not going to play today. If he's not going to play today, I mean, you just load up, check Diallo at 3,700. The guy played 39 minutes last game against the Lakers, 24 minutes against the Houston. I don't expect him to play 39 minutes, but if you're going to tell me he's going to play at least 25 minutes, I mean, this is a guy who racks up fantasy points very, very quickly. The Warriors have no real bigs. So if he's going to get that start today for Ayton at 3,700, that's another really good value play to go along with the Bucks guys that you can kind of just load up and feel pretty good about. 3,700, all you need is 19 for value. I think he definitely could get you 7x on that price tag. Moving on, next game we're talking about, we got Miami going into Utah to face the Jazz.
I just don't have a ton of interest in this spot, to be honest with you. I mean,
I think this is. So I'm not trying to interrupt you. I was just going to say, I think this is going to be more of a defensive game.
Look, I've said it all season. Utah is not the same team defensively that they've been. Especially you look at the last 2 seasons, they've been better defensively than they are this year. But Utah has put together a nice little streak of games, and they've quietly moved up to 35-18 in the 4 spot. You look at the last 10; they're only 5-5, but they had been 8-1 before they went the 10 games before the last 10. If that makes sense, they have won 3 straight. They're a good defensive team. They're not what they used to be defensively. You can look at Jimmy Butler here at 8,200. You can look at Kendrick Nunn at 4,100 if Mike Conley is going to be out. But to me, I'm going back to the same guy here, man. If I'm going to get exposure to this spot, I'm going to go with guys that I think are going to get big minutes off the bench on an 11-game slate that are going to get lost. Goran Dragic, talked about him the other day. Jay Crowder, loved him. His price tag was only 3.7. No, it's 4.1 on the previous slate. Price goes up to 5,300, but rightfully so. Coming off a monster game against the Golden State Warriors, where he played 31 minutes and had 39.6 fantasy points, and then the Portland game where he had 43.7. So, in the 2 games he's played since coming over from where was he? Memphis? Coming over from Memphis, he's had 43.7 and 39.6. He did play in Utah as well. So, a little narrative there. I like Crowder. I like Dragic. If you want to play Butler and Bam, fine. But, it's tournament plays only. To me, it's Dragic and Crowder. They've got the most upside, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. On the Utah side of things, Mike Conley, he was out last game just for rest purposes. I expect him to be back today, and his minutes have been back up.
Post-lock gets scratched.
What happened?
He was scratched post-lock with no news prior.
Yeah, but it was just for rest, so I definitely think that he'll play today. The minutes have been back up, playing 30-plus minutes at 5,600. I think it's a very fair price tag. Donovan Mitchell, his price tag is all the way down to 6,700. Definitely the production has been, kind of up and down, but the positive is that the minutes have consistently been there. The scoring has still been there. Just the usage has been down with Mike Conley coming back. I think that you could play Donovan Mitchell at 6,700. Feel very good about it. And then Gobert going against Miami, who doesn't have, a real center. I like him in this spot. 7,800 is a fair price tag for him. He's giving you a really solid floor, at least 33 fantasy points in 10 straight games, and he's showing us a couple upside games as well. So for me, it's simple. It's Mike Conley, it's Mitchell, it's Gobert, and I'm just going to kind of move on. Final game of the night, we got Lakers going into Denver to face the Nuggets.
Hey, man, and if you're a Laker fan and you've been a Laker fan for a long time, you know that anytime the Lakers go into Denver, it's a big game. The Lakers, you can go back to the playoff runs when they had Kobe and Pau Gasol and all those guys. Anytime the Lakers go into Denver, to me, I pay attention, and it's a big game. Vegas thinks it's going to be a close game, a 2.5-point spread. Anytime these two teams get together, it's a big game. For whatever reason, it just is. And you have to look at Anthony Davis. You have to look at LeBron James. These price tags are extremely fair price for these two guys. $10,000 for LeBron and $10,400 for Anthony Davis. If these guys were playing on separate teams, they'd both be over $11,000 on FanDuel at least. So I think there's a very fair price tags for both these guys. That's really where I'm at. You can continue to play Kyle Kuzma. You continue to take a look at Rajon Rondo. You continue to take a look at Dwight Howard. They're all tournament plays. They're all value plays in tournaments as secondary options. And I would kind of rank them as Kuzma, Rondo, Howard, if you were going to take a look at those guys. The problem with Kuzma is he's kind of on this pattern of alternating minutes. So if the pattern holds true, 25-20, 30-19, 29-20, tonight he should see closer to the 30-minute mark. And if that's the case at his price tag, is he a better play than Ilyasova? Is he a better play than Cheikh Diallo? I'm not sure, but he is in the mix as far as a secondary play at power forward. But to me, LeBron James and Anthony Davis are very, very cheap for what they bring to the table.
For sure. On the Denver side of things, there's 3 guys that I like. I really like Jamal Murray. Since coming back from injury, he's been playing very well at 7,000. I think he's a guy you can look at. Nikola Jokic, 10.3. The guy's on a really hot streak right now. He's a guy that we could consider. He's a guy that doesn't really get in too much foul trouble, so I'm not too worried about that. And then I like Torrey Craig a lot. Barton's been out. Torrey Craig, the past 3 games, he's played at least 31 minutes in 3 straight, 3,800. All you need is for value is about 19, and he's got you 24 in 2 of the past 3, which is 6x. We talk about needing at least 6x for value plays. There's a lot of good value. We talked about Craig. We talked about Diallo and Phoenix. We talked about the guys in Milwaukee. I think you could really get whoever you want tonight. The only other guy I'll throw out there outside of those 3, I don't know what to do. Millsap, he's had a couple of really good games since coming back, but he's only played 19 and 17 minutes. And then you got Jeremy Grant, who has played 29 and 30 minutes. So they're going to kind of be in a timeshare. My thing is what I'm kind of feeling right there. It's really just Jokic, Craig is a really good value play, and you can look at Jamal Murray as a GPP play, and that's really where I'm at. So, hey, man, I think that's really where we're at with this slate.
I would mention one more guy.
Go ahead.
I'd mention one more guy. Because it's an 11-game slate, I think Jordan McRae is a phenomenal tournament play today at 4,400. His first game, he was injured when they traded him, and then in his first game, just a couple days ago on Monday, he played 16 minutes off the bench, had 8, 5, and 3. And Malone has said that he expects with Barton to be out, that McRae could see a sizable role in the near future. So, if you're talking about Jordan McRae getting 24 minutes plus at 4,400, we know what he brought to the table with Washington. I think McRae is a phenomenal 0.2% owned play tonight that could get you 24 to 30 fantasy points with, 16 minutes, 8, 5, and 3. That's kind of what he did when he was in Washington, where he'd have 12, 7, 2, etc. So McRae's a guy that I'm looking at as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely could get behind the play as well, especially if the minutes are going to be trending up. So I think that's really where we're at with this slate. If you want a more in-depth analysis, please make sure to check out the site, DFSCheatSheet.com. And hey, good luck our guys' contest tonight, all right? Peace out.